from the Translation Service of the Council, and Neil James of the International Plain Language Federation.
And this panel will be moderated by our European Commission colleague, Clear Writing Coordinator in the Directorate General for Translation, Mr. Mark Prescott. Mark has been true to ClearLanguage throughout his career as translator, interpreter, speechwriter, editor, and press officer. So, just a technical comment, you don't have to worry about turning on and off the mics, that's done automatically. So, thank you.
Thank you very much for the introduction. Mr. Mark Prescott, I like that a lot. I'll use that more. Okay, I won't do any more introductions because I think you've heard who our panelists are, and if you want to know more about them, there are bios on the website, and also I guess you can harangue them during the coffee break if you're desperate to ask them any questions or know more about them. I'm sorry, no, you didn't get the memo about the blue. That's my fault. Next time I'll make sure you're in EU blue. Anyway. Okay, we'd like to have a bit of interaction with you if possible during the discussion. Hopefully there'll be time for questions at the end. And also there's a couple of Slido questions coming your way, so get ready for those. And already, if you can start thinking of some questions you'd like to ask at the end, that would be great. Okay, let's get down to business. So you're all standard bearers for ClearLanguage, and we're here to talk also about building consensus around ClearLanguage. So I'd like to ask you all, if possible, what the best ways you feel are for spreading the ClearLanguage message. Neil, perhaps we can start with you as the non-blue member of the panel.
Sure. Well, clearly, wearing green is the most important thing that that you need to do to get plain language happening. My previous organisation, Plain English Foundation, actually ran a 20-year survey of public sector organisations to look at this very question. What was it that when they attempted to implement plain language, what did they do? How well did they succeed? And what were the critical success factors? There are about 75 agencies who participated in this survey over a 20-year period. The scary thing was that the success rate, in other words, the percentage of the agencies that sort of permanently succeeded, was only around 40%. And so we were very interested in what did those 40% do that made a plain language program successful. And there were a number of critical success factors. Number one was get support from the executive. I was very, very pleased to hear this morning that, of course, in the EU, this is supported at the highest level. If you do not have that, your chances of success fall away very, very quickly. Having those champions at an executive level, having a strategy and building plain language into the regular strategic planning processes of an organisation. That's something I think we'll hear about throughout the conference. Making sure you train a critical mass of people, having evaluation and embedding plain language in systems. They were the things that the organisations that succeeded in making the plain language message a permanent part of their practice, they were the things that seemed to be most critical.
And was this a sort of best practice exercise? I mean, I presume this information was shared and hopefully other organisations have taken that on.
Yeah, well, we found one of the questions we asked is what prompted people to start a plain language program, and the most common thing was the example of another organisation. Nobody wanted to be first, but nobody wanted to be last. So as soon as there was another agency similar to their own, everyone then wanted to get going with it because the logic of the benefit of it became very clear very quickly.
Okay, clear language is contagious in a good way. Okay, great.
Hence the green.
There you go. Jeroen, do you want to?
Sure. I think for the Commission, we have a very long tradition of plain language support, and my unit, the editing unit, we came about over 20 years ago. And throughout the years, we have kind of what we could call an administrative jargon, developed a rich portfolio of services and products around plain language. More plainly, we have a full bag of tricks, I would say. I'd like to focus on 3 elements that introduce fun, that introduce praise and community. Let's start with the fun part. And Valeria, our director, already referred to it in her opening speech. We have a weekly newsletter that goes to 18,000 people in the Commission, and the Commission has about over 30,000 people working. So it goes every week, Friday morning, a little gem focusing on one aspect of plain language, of good communication, a very short newsletter, and we receive feedback from high and low, from directors general to assistants, that they value this kind of weekly reminder of how important communicating in a plain way is. So that's the fun part. Then perhaps the praise, because plain language is not only about teaching, it is about praising good practices. And in the Commission 15, 16 years ago, we introduced the Clear Writing Awards, which is kind of a yearly, if only, a yearly exercise where we invite all colleagues in the Commission to nominate examples of good writing, to nominate colleagues who support plain language communication in a very positive way. And every year this activity culminates in the Clear Writing Award ceremony around International Plain Language Day. And every time I'm really surprised about the high level of support that we receive. Our Secretary General, Ilse Johansson, who is extremely busy, makes it a point to clear her agenda, to come and give the maiden speech, to come and hand out the awards to the winners. In addition to that, quite a lot of the top-ranking Commission officials, Directors General, to name them by name, make the effort to support their teams to come to this ceremony and not just in words, but in presence, support their teams and praise good practice. I think it kind of links to what Neil said before. And then the third thing, communities. You can't run a plain language, or you can't develop a plain language culture in a organization, in a community, from one driving force. From my unit, for example, you need everybody on board. And the way we approach this is we set up a community of clear language, call them champions, clear language contacts, throughout all the services in the Commission, who spread the word at their level, who create communities with their colleagues directly. And I think that those three elements together support the more structural approaches.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, as you say, a lot of it echoes what Neil was saying, also about buy-in from management and embedding a clear language culture. Angelika, if I could turn to you, can you give us tell us a bit what happens at Parliament?
Thank you. Yes, I would like to give a couple of examples, which I think fit very well into what Neil was describing as the keys for being the implementing of plain language consistency and continuity. One of them is the clear language guidelines. In the European Parliament, we are very much focused on multilingualism, so it's about 24 languages of the European Union. And we have developed our own clear language guidelines for all these languages. And it is not a simple translation of English guidelines into other languages. It's really a localized version, as Lodavik was saying. And they don't look the same for all languages. These versions are based on ISO standards, so the principles are universal to all of them. But how they are implemented is different. Why is it important? It is important to have a common understanding of what we are talking about when we are talking about clear language or citizens' language, as we say also in the Parliament. So this is one tool that we are providing for sharing this common understanding. Another example would be our helpline. We do have also a helpline for drafters, which is available during the working hours. Whenever somebody has a question or doesn't know what to do, needs advice, they can call in 24 languages as well. So these are the things and that I would like to bring as examples of what our services are doing for the drafters. And then maybe the last one is linked for me to the idea of the example, which I think is very important with clear language. You have to show an example. And for example, for me, it starts with the fact of actually implementing clear language wherever I can, starting with an email. Whatever email I write, I think about the person that I'm writing to. When I draft guidelines, for example, for the Directorate General, I think about people who are going to read them, what they need to do with them. And this is, I think, for me, one important message of plain language or clear language, that it's not just language. It is a mindset. It's a mindset that you adopt, and then the more you practice, the easier it becomes. And people will see it. They will see that there is a difference, and it's contagious. That's the thing. So that's how we go about it. Thank you.
And sorry, just to be clear, the guidelines that you mentioned, they're for drafters at the Parliament. It's not like a public document. It's designed for people drafting Parliaments.
Yes, it's for specifically, and that's also important, it's specifically for Parliament documents. It's the documents that we work with, and I think this is a very important thing, that plain language is not the same irrespective of the genre. It's really has to be fine-tuned to your type of content, and these are fine-tuned for the Parliament type of content. Sure. And you will hear more about them tomorrow in some breakout sessions, so you're welcome to it. Yeah.
There's plenty of plugs for tomorrow coming your way. Shauna, can I turn to you, the council, where the buck stops in lots of ways? Yes. Tell us a bit more about what you do.
Well, of course, there is a huge clear language effort in the Council as well. We have initiatives that are similar to those happening in the Parliament, the Commission and other institutions. I won't go into too much detail on those at the moment because I'm going to give you a few more detailed examples later. The point I wanted to make at this stage was that all of the EU institutions come together to share their good practices in an interinstitutional working group on clear language. It was set up at the end of 2023 under the aegis of the Executive Committee for Translation. That's the body that brings together EU translation services at senior management level. Jeroen and I are both members of that working group. That's not why I wanted to plug it. I think, Jeroen, you'd agree we've already achieved a lot so far in quite a short time. We've been working closely to map and share training resources. We've even managed to mount a joint awareness-raising campaign. We've been promoting each other's clear language events, and I think gradually bringing other, less traditional partners on board and creating quite a multiplier effect already. But again, you'll hear much more about that tomorrow at the European Parliament event if you're going to attend that.
Absolutely, and it's currently chaired by Parliament. I think. You're over there. There you are. There's our current chair, Isabel, in the audience. Yeah, so you will hear more about that tomorrow. So please do attend or tune in for that. Shauna, yes, coming back to you. So around the budding consensus at the council level, can you tell us a bit more about maybe some success stories or some reliable partners that you've encountered along the way?
Yeah, well, first I'd like to talk about some unexpected allies that we have in the form of colleagues in the general and institutional policy team. It's a team that works coordinating the drafting of the European Council conclusions. And I say they're unexpected allies simply because of the extremely complex context that they have to navigate. In the weeks leading up to a European Council meeting where the leaders meet in Brussels, the ambassadors and ministers are continually fine-tuning the draft European Council conclusions. And the team that I referred to in the General and Institutional Policy team, they do their best to make sure that the text remains as clear as possible throughout the whole process, with all these additions and adjustments that you can imagine happen throughout that process. And the process is a highly political, highly sensitive one, as you can imagine. In particular, there's the challenge of reconciling clarity and diplomatic language. In particularly tricky subject areas, sometimes very elaborate formulations can creep into the text. And the team that I was referring to try to make sure that they look for a simpler, clearer solution every time. It's not always possible, but the aim and the intention is there, and I think more and more they're managing to achieve that.
Right. So yeah, I was going to ask: is that you find you get a lot of pushback, or are things improving in that respect? Are you're being listened to more when you're trying to explain these kind of things?
Absolutely, the team is very much on board with clear language, and making sure that every word in the text counts, and that there's nothing in it that's not relevant and is going to muddy the meaning. A few weeks ago at the Commission's Clear Writing Awards that you mentioned, Jeroen, Mark, you conducted a poll on the biggest challenge when trying to write clearly. And I think the overwhelming winner was writing a text with multiple drafters. And I mean, that's something that this team faces in a situation where the political stakes are really, really high. So for me, the message from all of that is a positive one, because I think if you can incorporate clear language considerations into a process at the level of presidents and prime ministers, where they're taking the toughest possible decisions, then we can be optimistic about implementing clear language strategies at other levels as well. And if I can just briefly mention another success story, maybe a more predictable one, because I'm talking about communications colleagues, but we have a very solid partner in our digital communications team. The English language unit worked very closely with the digital communications team responsible for the council social media accounts and also the council website. Editors from my team attend the weekly content crit sessions, where the communications colleagues look at the whole user experience, including the language element. So I think it's clear that by working together at the creation stage, I think it was Ludovic referred to as a process. If linguists and the technical communications colleagues, experts, work closely at that very early stage, then right from the outset, you can create a text that is, or create content that's clear and accessible to all citizens.
And it might even help with the whole drafting by committee, as we call it. If you start from the very beginning,
Absolutely.
even if you have a lot of people, inevitably there are a lot of commission texts as well that are drafted by a lot of people. A lot of people get involved. It's not something we can avoid. But if the clarity angle's there from the very start, then that's already a help, right?
Right.
Yeah, absolutely, great. Neil, any unexpected allies you wanted to mention?
Yeah, I just thought it'd be useful to mention the experience that I've had working with some 500 organisations in running plain language programs over the last 20 years. The tip that I often used to mention to trainers is that your initial opponent is your greatest opportunity. And I found one of the best ways to get momentum going if you are getting some training or attempting to get support for plain language as an organisation is when somebody comes out initially being very opposed. If you can convince them, and the logic of plain language does eventually do its work, and then they change their mind. I often talk about we've all heard the framework, the 7 stages of grieving. Well, there's the 7 stages of plain language, which go from this could never work, it's a dumb idea, to I've always thought this all along. And when you strike that kind of opponent and you're able to then convert them, suddenly, because everyone else says, and we've all met them, haven't we, in organisations, everyone says, oh, well, if even he agrees, then this stuff must be good. So I just think when it comes to allies, I mean, there's the obvious ones, building executive support and so on, but I often say look for your strongest initial opponent because that person will become your best unexpected ally.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point. And also we've talked a lot about legal language, but Shauna, you raised it, political language, diplomatic language. There's often a desire for ambiguity that can be a bit of a challenge for us to overcome. At the Commission, Jeroen, with the legal service?
Yeah, but I really relate to what you said, Neil, about trying to find your biggest opponent. And I relate to what Julie said at her speech. One of the things that at the Clear Writing Awards poll came out as well, in addition to multiple drafters, is time pressure, and especially in a kind of legal drafting context, we're all fighting for our slot in adding value to the original draft of a document. For a long time, the legal service, the quality of legislation team, and the editing unit kind of competed for the same slot. Recently, and I hope that this really kind of plays into the new ISO standard on plain legal communication. Recently, we have on both sides understood our complementarity and the importance of working together in improving the quality of new legislative documents. And I was very happy to see in the standard this kind of idea of combining 3 pen holders: the content owners, the legal drafters, and the linguists, the plain language experts. And I think for us, this new collaboration with our quality of legislation team really bides well for the future and for reinforcing plain language also in a kind of a legal drafting context.
Yeah. You mentioned the ISO standard. I'm going to segue less than seamlessly into my first Slido question, which is actually probably a little bit redundant now after we got so much great information from Lodewijk and Julie earlier. But if we could get there we go. It's right down here. Silly me. How familiar are you with the ISO standard? If anybody puts more or less, completely in the dark. Okay, I was expecting everybody to say we know everything about it now because we've just heard all about it, but maybe you'll have to come and do it again, Julie. I'm not sure. Explain everything again. Okay. Quite a few people who are not very familiar with it, which probably includes me, actually, to be fair. I'm kind of more or less aware. We have 2 people in particular here on the panel, Neil and Angelika, who are very much up to speed, I think. So could I turn to you first? Neil, could you tell us a little bit about, possibly a little bit pushed for time, but like a bit about how the standard came about and your involvement in the Federation's involvement and where we are now?
Sure, and I'll leave the more description about the standard to Angelika, who's convener of the ISO working group. But yeah, the International Plain Language Federation is made up of, it's really a mechanism for its member organisations, Clarity and Plain, and a Centre for Plain Language in North America. And we'd been talking amongst those organisations at our conferences about establishing an international standard, but we recognise that we're experts in plain language, but not experts in writing standards. So, decision was made to partner with ISO, the International Organisation for Standardisation, to help develop. And our member organisations coordinate providing the expertise on the ISO committee. The Federation has a committee that helps to promote the standard, its localisation and implementation committee. So it's really a mechanism to help bring together the experts from around the world to partner with ISO in developing it. So it really does combine the best of plain language expertise with standards development expertise. It's still I'm not entirely surprised by those results because it's still fairly early days. Part 1 was only published in 2023, and the focus at the moment has been in getting it translated and localised in different languages, and that's been gathering momentum. It's now available in 21 countries in some 12 languages, and I'm sure as of 5 minutes ago there's another country that has published it. So it's starting to get out there in different languages in different countries, being adapted for local conditions. How much it's being adopted, we're getting the first sort of anecdotal information. The Federation is publishing case studies on its website that demonstrate how well it works. But we're really at the beginning of this. It's taken some time, but we're now at an exciting launch point where this is going to start to have a significant influence right around the world. And I think Angelika can probably talk a bit more about the standards and how it's evolving from there.
Yes, thank you, Neil. I will not be telling you what's in the standard, but from the perspective of the chair or a convener in ISO Speak of the working group on plain language, I would like to actually give you a little bit of information about who is creating these standards and why these standards are important. In the ISO working group on plain language, we have about 160 experts from all over the world. So this is a big drafting group, and we are representing very many countries. In the technical committee where our working group sits, we have 65 member countries. 40 plus of them are actually the participating members, meaning that they have to actually decide on the standards, vote on them, comment on them. And then we have also observing members, and the number is growing. So there is a lot of experts from all over the world who actually have a say in the drafting and can comment on the drafts. And it is this rigorous consensus-based drafting process that actually produces at the end best practice, because that's what standards are, which is reliable, and you can be sure that it's really something that has been thought through the commenting grounds. I mean, we've had hundreds and hundreds of written comments that need to be replied, analyzed, discussed, and that's why it also takes time to actually develop a standard. We have tried to be very true to plain language and keep our standards short, so they are rather short and concise, so you won't need a day to read them, and it's really, I recommend you to have a look. So that's the background, and what we are actually doing at the moment is we continue working on it, because the working group on plain language didn't stop with the first standard. Now, as Neil said, we have to build further the momentum, get the adoption going, and different language versions out there, localized versions as well. So in the working group, we've just finished the part 2, which you will be hearing more about in tomorrow's panel as well, with Julie, who will be there. And the work continues on next parts. We had just yesterday a meeting, and we were discussing, we are at the final stages of the third part, which is about science writing. So that should be coming out next year, at the beginning of next year. And then we are also working on the fourth part, which will be the first plain language, which you can actually have certification against. Because so far, parts 1, 2, 3 are guidelines. They are just for guidance. And the part 4 will be actually requirements for organizations who want to implement plain language, as Neil was describing at the beginning, this best practice. So it will be kind of guideline for that, and you will be able to get certified against it.
And individuals as well, or is it more for organizations?
It's for organizations.
Yeah, okay. Understood. Thank you very much. Shauna, what's the council's take on the standard?
Well, we're very grateful for the standard and the efforts to create it. I think Ludovic referred to legitimacy earlier on, and it really lends legitimacy to our efforts to promote clear language. At the General Secretariat of the Council, we've been trying to promote the standard in our daily contacts with our internal stakeholders, through information articles, training, any events that we have. And it's really fantastic to have the ISO standard to guide and to bolster our efforts.
Great, so thank you to the two of you in particular for helping push that through. We're a little bit pushed for time. I know we're supposed to have 3 years, but I think that's probably... Have we locked the doors? Obviously, as we've said, there's a lot of plugs for tomorrow's event. We also have, as Vladimir mentioned earlier, we have a lot of things happening still this morning, including the breakout sessions, one of which is inevitably on artificial intelligence. So if we could just have a little bit of time just to get your thoughts on where we are and where we're going with that. Before that, I'd like to get your insights a little bit. So we have another Slido question. I'm to keep doing that. Good Lord. Okay, there we go. If you could all vote now. That's... Yeah, I'm not entirely surprised by that. Are any of you... Is that kind of what you would expect, perhaps, from our audience, that most people are using AI most of the time these days? Well, half the people. And quite a few never use it. Interesting. Angelika, I think you've been doing some testing at Parliament. Can you tell us a bit more about that?
Yes, it's a very interesting result, the poll result, which shows, I think, that AI is here to stay because most of the people are using it. So in the Parliament, we have wanted to look at it really related to our specific context and how it works for our documents, and especially if we're talking about plain language or clear language and editing. So we've set up some tests because talking about, yes, AI can do plain language or no, AI can't do plain language, it doesn't make sense because this doesn't take us anywhere. So we set up last year and this year, and we are still continuing the tests. Tests where we wanted to see on our actual documents, what can AI do? Can it do a plain language document which is usable? And from the limited experiments last year, we saw that when we are looking at the AI clear language rewrites, which are done according to the prompts, like using the clear language guidelines, use this, do that, so all those things. There are some clear language guidelines or plain language guidelines which AI is a master at. It loves bullet points. One of the documents we tested, it was all full of bullet points, just bullet points. So it's really mastered that one, and you have to curb it somehow because it's becoming too much. Headings, it can do well. So there are things that it can do well. And these things are the things that you see when you have a first glance at a AI-generated document in plain language. You think like, yeah, that looks really good. But if you start reading, and that's what we asked our language professionals, editors to do, and you have also the actual original document on the basis of which it created this plain language, you notice that there are two very important issues. One of them has been also mentioned by Julie, and this is the fact that it really, it's unreliable because it omits important information and it distorts information as well. And it's not surprising for those who know how AI works that it does that. But for example, one of the examples I think I remember is that we had in the text, there was a phrase that it's a delicate political situation. And it had a delicate political moment. And it had changed it into it's a crucial moment, political moment. It's like, but crucial and delicate is not the same thing. And here it comes to the political and diplomatic nuance that we very often have to pay attention to, and especially our editors when they are not allowed to do all kinds of things. It just doesn't work there because it doesn't understand the context. And that's where we saw with the human editor rewrites, which we have tested this year very extensively to compare them to AI rewrites, that there, all this nuance, all these important things are there, whereas AI is really not able to cover that. So I don't have the results of our last test because we finished them last week, but next year I will have a lot of data because this time we did it in a very extensive way with 50 documents and specifically for our purposes, communication documents, but also the political documents like resolutions, just to see where it can help us because we want to use it, we have to use it, but we have to understand where it can actually help us. And what is clear to me is that just out of the box, you throw the text in, you get plain language thing out, doesn't work.
Sure, okay.
It has to be more nuanced.
Absolutely, yeah. Good, well, you can come back next year and give us the results. Shauna, how does your experience compare?
Yeah, I mean, I think we all agree that there are many ways that artificial intelligence can help us achieve clear language. But I think there's still grounds for concern that the generic language and oversimplification associated with artificial intelligence might well be to the detriment of the reader-centered approach that we need in order to truly achieve clear language. And Julie, you referred to this as well in your keynote speech. I think what we have to do is to try to learn how we can use AI to speed up our work while still preserving the reader-centred approach. Just to give you an example from the Council, we've recently produced a drafting resource assistance for clear English drafting. And the content is 100% targeted, not targeted, but tailored to meet the needs of drafters in the General Secretariat. And the feedback has very much been that the content is fantastic, but we'd like it automated. So we're hoping that we can keep our reader-centered content, but apply potentially an AI tool that will help improve the user experience for drafters in the General Secretariat. So combining the two approaches. So again, maybe I can report back on that at a future date.
More than welcome. Well, we've locked the doors for next year, so it's fine. We'll get somebody to text them in. Jeroen, the Commission's doing a lot on, the DG Translation's been doing a lot in AI. Can you give us, you've got 30 seconds.
Okay, yes, we're doing a lot, and I think what we are focusing on is trying to develop very specific services where, for example, we've recently launched an AI-based editing service called WebText, where people can upload a document that they would like to present on a web page, and what the AI does, it kind of applies the real principles for web text communication. Another service that we've recently launched is Accessible Text, where AI helps drafters develop a document for people with cognitive difficulties. So it kind of simplifies the document so that it's more easily understandable. And I think identifying these different kind of niche services helps progress with what AI can do. And for me, this is only the tip of the iceberg. I'm very positive about the potential of AI, but we need to continue to be critical, of course.
Sure. And of course, we have the editing services, which we're expanding at Digital Translation now, which give us the human touch as well, to make sure that, as both of you pointed out as well, that we make sure that texts remain human and emotive, and the things that AI cannot do, that we have our most important resource, which is us as human beings, to bring those aspects. Neil, is there anything you'd like to add?
Just quickly on AI, and I guess picking up on a point Julie made in her talk about, we don't know a lot about AI as yet. ChatGPT published recently some information about usage, what people are using AI for, and the trends were very interesting. The top 3 uses for AI are for searching information, for practical guidance, and thirdly for writing. But and in all categories, there is a huge growth in use for all of those things, but they're the top 3 things. But interestingly, the ones that are trending up are use for searching information and use for practical guidance, and in fact, trending down is the use of AI for writing as a proportion of the total use. Now, the actual use for writing is still growing, but as a proportion of the types of use of AI for writing is actually trending down compared to others. So, I think it may settle down in directions that may be surprising in the future.
That's interesting. Positive potential as well, right? Very good. Thank you very much. Thanks to all of you. I had more questions, but I'm anxious about the time. I'm always anxious about time. Do we have any questions? Can I throw the gentleman over there? Can you put your mic on?
If I can just start with a comment relevant to both sessions. I was a writer of law. When I started in 1985, I come from across the ocean in Australia. My jurisdiction actually mandated that we start writing our laws in plain language. So in Australia, most jurisdictions have been doing that now for 40 years. And in relation to a lot of the questions at the first session, it hasn't caused any problems. We had to be translators from old law style to normal English in the early years, but after a while that doesn't become an issue anymore. The question, I've been coming to these conferences for 20 years. Most of them have been in Europe. When they've been in Europe, there's usually been someone from the EU there to tell us what the EU was doing in relation to plain language. If I could ask the Europeans on the panel, have they noticed in their lifetime in the EU significant changes in plainness, given that the EU's been promoting plainness for a very long time?
Anybody in blue like to field that question?
I don't know why I agreed to start. I mean, I think that clearly we have a long way to go. But I think, the ISO standard, parts 1 and 2 and the parts to come will help us along that path. But I think also we have, we're starting to communicate better. There's definitely a better communication strategy in all of the institutions, and an awareness of the need to foster trust among EU citizens. So we have a long way to go, but there have been improvements.
Yeah, maybe to add to Shauna, this is also my impression that with the communication documents or with informing citizens, like, for example, the websites, what DG Communication is doing, the documents that they are putting out, and all the what Europe does for you, we have like really clear and short things. There is a lot of improvement there, and that is the area which has moved really, and is conscious of the fact that we have to speak to the citizens of the European Union. Where the area which is more complicated and difficult is the legal drafting part, because of the very specificities of the European Union drafting process, which has been mentioned already. It's political, it's very complex, and very often there are things, and there's also the aspect of non-native speakers doing it. Because the negotiations are done in English, and then you end up with things which are not always very elegant and nice, but it's a compromise. And so this is, I think, the difficulty that we have, and we will always have to balance that. But on the margins of it, I think even there things are moving already considerably, because the legal drafting guides that we have jointly for all the institutions do actually mention clear language, that the text has to be clear. So there is already a lot of elements, but it's a very step-by-step long-term process in our case, I think.
Yeah, I can confirm what both my colleagues have said. We have come a very long way. And especially I think on the level of awareness, intention, I think there we are making huge strides, and as Valère Darroch said that in the opening speech, we have support for using plain language at the very highest level. Our president insists on it, our Secretary General insists on it, and this has permeated throughout the organization now, and I think we're really on the right path. Does that mean that all of our communication material is clear? No, but we produce so much. We produce hundreds of thousands of pages a year. So there is a long way to go, for sure, but we are working on it.
And if I can just add as well, there's a lot of willingness. I mean, nobody's pushing back against clear language. Nobody's sitting around saying we shouldn't draft clearly. It's a continuous process, and we just have to keep doing what we're doing, really. Thank you all very much. Yes, I think we've got a couple more minutes.
No, attends, c'est bon? Okay. My name is Anne Verviers, and I wanted to say that 30 years ago, I started here the first training in clear writing in French. And it was a long fight well, not to teach, but to work with the text of the Commission. Then I teach also in European Parliament, in the Council. And in 30 years, I can say that I have seen, hopefully, the evolution. So you are completely right. It goes little by little. Also, I wanted to mention that a former President of Commission, Jacques Delors, had already asked, so it was more than 30 years ago, that European texts are clear to, I'm not sure I say it right in English, pour augmenter l'adhésion des citoyens européens à l'Union européenne. So maybe somebody can translate.
To enhance the way the citizens of the European Union relate to the Commission or to the institutions.
Voilà, so already Jacques Delors asked it. Thank you. So voilà, I'm very happy.
Just to say, that was mentioned by the Secretary General in her speech to the Clear Writing Awards in 2024. We picked up on that as well. So yes, we quoted President Delors in that particular speech. But yes, thank you for pointing that out. So yes, it goes back a long way. I think we're done for time, unfortunately. One more? Is there one more question? Yes, sir.
I wanted to come back to AI. It was mentioned that it tends to omit and distort information. So is it better to avoid it completely just because of the danger that it might be priming the editor and the editor might miss these omissions and these distortions? Or is it useful anyway to speed up the process? What's your research saying about this?
I think we shouldn't ignore it, but there is a different way of working with AI tools. And for example, it's not necessarily the most efficient to put something through AI and ask an editor then to clean it up or to check it, because that was also the feedback from the people who had to do it, that they would have done it from scratch faster than fixing the AI things there. They would have rewritten in plain language faster themselves. So this is important, but it doesn't mean that we should not use AI when editing or creating plain language documents, because there are many uses, many different use cases, how it can help drafters who are not plain language experts. There could be AI tools which actually are tailored or fine-tuned to provide them with support to write more plainly. And there are also ways how editors can use AI as an assistance for creating plain language documents. So there are other ways of seeing it as just, and it's the same for me for translation, coming from translation, that it's not necessarily that you put something through the machine and then you clean it up. There are other ways of speeding up your work and working with the content of AI.
That's really, really useful. Thanks, Angelika. So we didn't hear that. Basically, the gentleman in the audience was confirming what you were saying. So you're obviously right. I think we have to stop there, right? So I'm really sorry. If you have any more questions, feel free to put them to our panelists if they're not rushing off anywhere during the coffee break. One very last thing. Sorry, I think you were going to tell us the breakout sessions. Please remember which one you're going to. But there's space in all. So if you've forgotten which one you signed up for, it's okay. Thank you all very, very much.